I am beyond excited to have this following fireside chat conversation with Representative Greg Nance, who's here directly from the state legislature conversations in Olympia. So thank you so much for joining us today. Greg Nance represents Kitsap as state representative for Washington's 23rd legislative district. He's the son of a social worker and public defender, learning the values of hard work growing up in a strong union household and rural household. So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Growing up in Kitsap, he is committed to delivering for neighbors across the peninsula a lifelong ferry rider. Greg is on a mission to fix our ferries, make them more accessible, sustainable, and seamlessly reachable for all of us. He's also working to strengthen our schools, expand affordable childcare, reliable public transportation, bolster our healthcare workforce, fight fentanyl, and mobilize mental health. All subjects of conversation that took place earlier today and how it all connects together. So I appreciate that. Serving on the House Transportation, Agriculture and Natural Resources, and Post-Secondary Education and Workforce Committees, he was recently elected Vice Chair of the Legislature's Maritime Caucus. Help me in welcoming Greg Nance to our conversation. Would you like to start with saying anything?
I want to start with and hopefully this is on. I want to start with a big thank you. I am so excited to be here. There is a lot of doom and gloom right now at the Capitol as we negotiate out a couple of budgets that are way underwater right now. And there's a lot of what we can't do kind of thinking in the Capitol right now. And so I am just energized to be in this space with you and to feel the energy of what we can do. And that's going to be part of my message during today's fireside is there's a lot of progress we can make. There's a lot of places where when we focus and exert our energies together that we can make really material, concrete progress, pun intended, for the steps ahead. And the spark notes here is I need your help to make this happen. And I can tell this is a group that cares deeply, that's rolling up our sleeves to make it happen. And I'm thrilled, honored, overjoyed to be with you here today. So thank you for having me. Hey, wow.
Well, to start up, you've been so involved in making the ferries work. So looking at seamless access, affordability, but also understanding the multimodal network around it and how it all connects. Tell us a little bit about the journey and how you arrived at why multimodal transportation is important and the emphasis on that.
Yeah, so can I get a show of hands? Who here has taken the ferry before, a Washington State ferry? Wow, great. So virtually everybody in the room and hopefully some folks on Zoom as well. Our ferries are iconic. They're one of the first things that folks think about and want to do when they come to Seattle and to Washington. And for years and years and years, the ferries worked. They were on time. My dad actually commuted 5 days a week for 32 years. And so that is how my dad put food on the table. It's how he sent 3 kids to college, is getting a good job in the city. And hundreds of thousands of families around Washington share that story. We count on the boats. For the last 6 years, it's been a really tough time. COVID laid bare some of the challenges we had with our workforce, so an aging workforce, a coming silver tsunami with retirements flooding through, and then also vessels that were not adequately fully maintained. And so we are in year 6 of those service disruptions and service cuts. And it's been really tough for a number of us. And it has been a wake-up call not only for folks in Kitsap, but up north in the San Juans or Whidbey or Port Townsend, down south to Vashon and to Point Ruston, Tacoma, of just how much we count on this. And there's some really important lessons to learn when a system that's worked really well stops working as effectively. And we learn that we have to keep investing in our workforce. We learn that we have to keep investing in our capital assets to keep all of this moving. And for those of us working in public transit across Seattle and across the state, those are lessons that are familiar to many of us. If you invest in your workforce or your drivers and operators and your mechanics, things work better. And if you invest in your capital assets and to upgrade and to maintain and preserve, things work better. And so those are lessons that many of us on the transportation committee down in the Capitol have learned the hard way the last 6 years. And I think there is a silver lining to some of the service disruptions. And it's that we're zooming out a little bit and we're realizing that we've got to make more intelligent, proactive investments into maintaining what we have and to invest in a cleaner, more connected future as well. And one of the things that I want to flag here is our ferry service, which works around the clock, literally 24/7, 365, has really inspired me with how we've shown up. And we are really building out a new model for how we approach. And we're going from kind of a shore to shore model of just putting cars and people on at one shore, dropping them off on the other, to more of a door to door model. We need to be much more holistic with how the ferry connects with public transit on both sides of the water and how we can be investing to get folks around the Sound, not just on these 10 highways, marine highways across the Sound, but actually taking a much wider aperture for how do we help folks get to where they're aiming to get. And how do we make sure that our schedules and timetables sync up nicely, make sure that there's a safe sidewalk and pedestrian and bike lane where you get dropped off, not just a fast highway for you to burn through the next town as you go. And so those conversations are actively happening. And a big part of that is because these conversations have been happening in town halls and at city halls and in nonprofit quarters and advocacy quarters all across the state. And so the conversations that start at the grassroots absolutely influence how we then approach these questions and we approach these budget line items to actually make investments back into our community. So that is all ongoing, and we're going to need your help to accelerate these during some tough fiscal headwinds that we now face.
I love that you touched on collaboration and these cooperative ways of addressing these transportation gaps. Can you identify for those in the room, where are those gaps specifically so we can, better coordinate or make those bridging conversations happen?
So we are in the midst of a really important development in our thinking at the state level, where we have fully kind of awoken to the fact that multimodal connectivity is very, very important. The funding model around that has still not caught up. So there is still huge gaps from a funding perspective for how do we get the dollars into our communities to actually help bridge these gaps that are large and that our city partners, our regional transit partners, our county partners alone cannot bridge. We need the help of the state. We need the help of federal partnership to really step up. That's one thing that we are awakening to, and we need continued advocacy to identify those gaps and to then make them whole. By the same token, even when we get more of the dollars into our community, and I'll share an example from Kitsap, we have a really, really exciting multimodal project to redevelop the Warren Avenue Bridge. And if you've ever taken the ferry to Bremerton and then you've walked off or driven off, you may have walked or driven across the Warren Avenue Bridge. It's a huge connection point from the city of Bremerton into East Bremerton, the rest of the peninsula. And that bridge really needed a makeover and a modernization back when I was a high school baseball player in Bremerton, batting about 200 and dropping fly balls in left field. And now 20 years later, we really need modernization and multimodal thinking. In the state budget, we actually have those dollars lined up, $25 million to make that happen. That's a big deal. I'm really proud of that. But here's the big but. We've got to make sure that we hold the partners building that and actually engineering that, constructing that, accountable to make sure that we're actually building it to the scope and the spec, and that we are actually creating a safer, more walkable, more bikeable, more rollable community connection. Because one thing that we've observed on the ground, just because something is in an initial spec or scope, and just because it's funded, doesn't mean that it actually is built to that scope or that spec. And too often, the first thing that goes are that protected bike lane or that wide sidewalk that are really important to keep us safe, to keep us connected. And too often, we get scope creep where all of a sudden an extra lane gets added to a highway instead of the thing that we agreed upon 2, 3, 4 years upstream. And so that's one element where we really count on our partners. And I want to give a shout out. There's a lady in the room here in the pink shirt, Marcia Cutting, who is an absolutely amazing advocate for multimodal in Kitsap. And can we give her Marcia a round of applause? Marcia, she has done incredible work to help keep us accountable for more accessibility on Bainbridge Island and across Kitsap. And that is a model partner because she helps us to open our eyes of the challenges that we see. Everything from we actually have a really brand new, beautiful terminal on Bainbridge Island that is not fully accessible, despite spending over $40 million on it. We've got to get that right, and we count on our neighbors to flag, hey, look, this does not load the way it should. And at high tide, we have challenges loading and unloading for neighbors with mobility challenges. That's not acceptable in the year 2025, and yet it's just happened. We got to get that right. And so that's part of how we count on each other to help us to get it right. And that means the advisory boards and the councils and the we've got to empower neighbors with different lived experience to help us step up to see the right path and then go deliver, fund it, and then deliver on the right path too.
Awesome. And now, of course, I'll have to come in with the data hat. You've been a great advocate for OS Connect, understanding how showing these discontinuities or lack of traversability through data can also help people, legislators, understand where the gaps are getting created. So how would you say that we can kind of merge the storytelling, the lived experiences, and the data together to influence policy change and resource allocations?
Yes, wow, great question. So with too often we don't have the data that we really need to make key decisions. And so it's a game changer to actually have a database that's visualizable of here are these broken connections, we got to build them as we go. That also helps us hold the folks building accountable. I'll give you an example that I think helps prove the point. We have a great team that does county maintenance and road construction, road repair in Kitsap. World-class team led by a former Army colonel who used to build Army bases overseas. So like really great experience. We're really lucky to have that individual leading the charge for us. And he was laying out how there's a really, really clear form of concrete grading. When you're building a new road, here's like the concrete specs for how we're going to actually build this out from a pavement perspective. I had no idea there was such a thing. And it's highly quantifiable. That's really, helpful. And at the same time, when we talk about pedestrian facilities or bicycle facilities, it gets really fuzzy and there's gray area. And all of a sudden, the grant that was supposed to build pedestrian facilities or bicycle facilities or both, we start fudging on those because they're a little fuzzy. There's more wiggle room from a construction perspective. And so part of what I'm working on behind the scenes is how do we create more of a bright line there? How do we create more of a quantifiable binary logic of either you're building this up to snuff or not, and then we can hold folks accountable to actually build that out. And the missing piece for a lot of that has actually been data. And it's been a visualization of what does it actually mean to have a traffic level stress of a 5.0 versus a 4.0 versus a 3.0. And what does that actually mean for a mom and her kid trying to get to school and how they feel safe or not. And that is really, really important. So I'm a lifelong pedestrian. I was able to walk to school growing up, despite living in a big forest. It was safe enough with wide enough shoulder where my mom felt like that was a safe choice for me, which that was a game changer for me and my family, so that my folks could both get to work and not have to worry about getting me to school. Every child should feel safe to walk to school. Every community member should feel safe to get to the grocery store, whether they're walking or rolling or biking or driving. And yet too often that's not the consideration. So I think when we talk about open streets and data sets and visualization, your stories are the missing piece now. As we build out the data, as we build the visualization, we need your stories helping us to see the importance of these connections. And those stories paired with this data help us to get dollars into the budget to actually make this happen.
I am actually quite impressed that you called out the level of traffic stress hierarchy. I was not aware that legislators are necessarily aware of that or even understand what the numbers mean. So kudos. However, due to the lack of data, traditionally some of these scores are missing pieces of information, right? Like we were talking earlier about access to frequent transit. We don't have the numbers because the data hasn't been there. What's a good way to acculturate folks like you who need the numbers quick and on a particular scale, and to understand what they mean. How do we have those conversations to kind of accustom folks to understanding that?
So none of us are born knowing this stuff, right? And so every one of us, if we think back to our kind of seminal moment of how we got plugged in and involved, there was someone that kind of brought us in, right? And for me, there's two bicycle advocates in Greater Bremerton, Diane Iverson and Paul Dutke, that have really helped me to better understand challenges. They took me on a bicycle ride all around the east side here in Seattle to see just the difference. And they always bring their tape measure where we can actually look at what the difference of a 6 foot or an 8 foot or a 10 foot pathway, what that means for us as bicyclists or pedestrians. That is really, really, really helpful. And so, those of us that have built some technical knowledge, your knowledge is so important for us getting this right. And so, my encouragement is try to bring someone in. And maybe it's a city council member that you know or that you've met. Maybe it's a county commissioner. Maybe it's a tribal advocate or council member or a state legislator in your neck of the woods. And over coffee, share a little bit of how you're seeing things and a couple tweaks and changes that could actually move the needle for y'all. And this is one area where in Kitsap, we measure level of service. And that's how when we're thinking about a new development or we're thinking about a new roadway, that's what we're dialed in on. We're not thinking about the level of stress. And now that I'm visiting new developments to figure out how the state can better support with infrastructure, that's now a framework that we have. And unfortunately, the state is not yet using that as a criterion funding decisions. But at the very least, that's a phrase now used in our committee room. And that's now used as a way that we're thinking through. We need to keep accelerating that because every day that we're not optimizing around this is a day that we're missing out.
That's very forward thinking. So I'm quite impressed with the level of kind of generational thinking that you're willing to do on behalf of our transportation users. Would you say that there's an avenue to acculturate other legislators to the same kind of longer term thinking? Because we were talking about earlier making generational investments in transportation choices.
One kind of humbling thing about working on transportation, and maybe some of y'all have done this too, when you're crossing a bridge or a chunk of highway, you see the year stamp. You guys ever taken a look at this? It's like, wow, so Agate Pass Bridge is what connects Bainbridge Island to the Kitsap Peninsula. I've driven across and run across this thousands of times in my life. That was built long before I was born, before my parents were born. There was some group of civic leaders and politicos in the 1930s and 40s that said, hey, we need a bridge to better connect this. And in the 1940s, they planned this. And by 1950, they had constructed it. They put a stamp on it. They opened it to the public. That is way, way, way before I certainly walked the earth. And yet that transportation choice now absolutely impacts the world that I live in, that we live in. And I view a sense of responsibility to folks that I will never meet, that will live long after I'm gone, that will use some of the traffic infrastructure that we're now deciding to build out. We have a moral obligation to get that right, to give our kids and grandkids a safer set of pathways and connections. And for me, I have three elements that I work for: fast ferries, so connectivity across the sound; safe streets, so that everyone feels safe actually getting around; and then connected communities. Those are three things that I think a lot about, and that we in partnership can help do together. And it helps. I grew up on Suquamish ancestral lands. And the Suquamish, one of the teachings is, it's not about optimizing for today. It's about thinking 7 generations out. How are we helping those all the way out into the frontier of time to have a healthier world to inhabit? And transportation is absolutely vital for that healthier world that all of us can inhabit.
In that context, every partner here is in partnership with other organizations trying to make Sea World of Change. I know you have been named a change maker by President Obama. Where do you see people partnering best? And what are some of the potential partnerships that have the highest impact in terms of multi-solving some of these connectivity problems that you've mentioned, as well as, improving safety and ferry travel?
Yeah. So the first thing is you got to pick a problem that you're passionate about, because change is hard and change takes time. And if you're not actually passionate, you'll wash out after the first or the 100th obstacle, and there will be more ahead. And so I know the fact that y'all are here on a Friday afternoon where you could be anywhere in the world. Y'all care, and you care deeply to be here to begin with. And I deeply appreciate that, because we need more folks that care to step up and work together. So, number one, you're in the right place, and we're all leveling up here together to get ready to make that change. The second element I'd say is the power of unlikely alliances. The power of unlikely alliances. And so I always, old politics is local. I think back to the streets of Bremerton, where we have made a lot of progress in short order. One of the ways we've done that is with unlikely alliances. Our transportation advocates, and we have some really thoughtful folks that know their stuff and that hold our city and our county and our state leaders accountable. They have made a ton of progress by partnering with unlikely allies. And in this case, it's a neighborhood business district, the Charleston Business District. And I don't know if any of y'all have been there yet, but it is awesome. It's like a wonderful art walk. It has all these restaurants and great cafes. And these are business leaders who care deeply about getting more pedestrian and cyclists and strollers going through their neck of the woods. And so they want traffic to slow down and be safer. And so all of a sudden, it's not transportation advocates against the world, which sometimes it feels that way, right? Instead, it's advocates working with the Chamber of Commerce. And guess who one of the most influential stakeholders for some of our conservative legislators and conservative leaders? Chambers of commerce, and sometimes it's realtors as well. And all of a sudden, when realtors and Chamber of Commerce are saying, look, we need to slow down traffic, we need to get more pedestrians, we need to get more cyclists through here, something really powerful starts happening. Different political leaders of all stripes are saying, hey, we need to slow down cars, we need some traffic calming, we need to actually build out a safer set of pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And now it's not transportation advocates against the world, it's transportation advocates with everybody to try to create safer streets, faster ferries, more connected communities. And that has been extremely powerful in our neck of the woods. And I want to lay out a little bit of this future vision. So many of us have taken the ferry, and that makes me very happy that we've had a chance to ride the ferry before. In time, no matter which ferry you take, and this is I deem like my life's work. I want to make this happen. That if you take the ferry over to Bainbridge or to Kingston, or you take it to Bremerton, that when you get off that ferry, there is a very, very safe place. Whether you're driving off, you're walking off, strolling off, biking off, whatever, you will have a safe set of connectivity that will all lead you to the Sound to Olympics Trail, the STO. Have we heard of the STO? This is going to be a really, really cool deal that is now getting fully built out. That from Puget Sound, you can head into the Olympics, and from Puget Sound all the way to the Pacific Ocean on protected trails that are safe, that are walkable, bikeable, rollable, that are friendly to human use. And that will be a really, really big deal, because this is, when we talk about unlikely alliances, this is maybe number one on my list that I can think of. That all of a sudden, folks that have timber interests in the Olympic Peninsula realize, hey, this actually might be worth more, not if I clear cut it and sell it, but rather if this is actually a beautiful place that people want to bike alongside or roll or walk alongside for miles and miles and miles. And then you have this innkeeper that instead of selling their couple acres to clear cut, they want to keep that as a beautiful place that folks want to go stay at their bed and breakfast. And that shopkeeper now wants bicyclists and pedestrians in this beautiful place to actually go enjoy the sandwiches or the various refinements at their shop. And the barkeeper thinks the same thing. And all of a sudden, with these unlikely alliances, the Olympic Peninsula, which used to be the timber capital of the world, is thinking of themselves in a very different way. They want to be the multimodal capital of the world, and they want to be the connection capital of the world. That's a really, really powerful frame. And as a guy who represents the Kitsap Peninsula, I want to bring more folks through Kitsap, because before you can get to the Olympic Peninsula, you're going to go through Kitsap. we've got two peninsulas, the Olympics, the big one, and then the Kitsap, the little one in the middle. And folks coming through my neck of the woods, that's good for my small business too. And so that is a little bit how we're approaching this with an unlikely alliance that led to over $16 million in a federal raise grant and a bunch of matching state and county and then city dollars as well, with transportation advocates really leading the charge over the last decades. And a lady, maybe she's online, maybe not, Leslie Schneider. She is a big time transportation advocate turned city councilwoman on Bainbridge Island, has really helped us lead that charge. And all of a sudden, she has been all about the unlikely alliances for years and years and years. And the result of that is we're actually getting this done and we're making it happen. And it's taken a long time, but if you keep pushing, eventually Sisyphus gets that stone to the top of the hill, and together we'll do it.
I like that. I'm wondering if you're saying that the timing and alliances are right to further an idea that was pushed in the earlier session, a state level transportation trust fund, a lot like the National Highway Trust Fund, to really work and promote pedestrian, bicycle accessible infrastructure. Is now the time?
I love that. I think we need bold vision right now. And let's rewind the tape to those 1940s and the 1950s. The boldest idea in transportation, what do we think? It was interstate highways, which in some levels actually helped to revolutionize commerce and created a lot of uplift. It also came with pretty devastating consequences for connectivity within our cities and our communities. And so we really need imagination. And this is a nation, we have put astronauts on the moon. We can do bigger and better things here, and we got to step up to the plate to make that happen. And I think a transportation trust fund that really puts pedestrians and cyclists and small businesses and healthy communities front and center can be really, really, really powerful. There is never a perfect time, but the next best time is now. And though we face really significant headwinds at the federal level, where active transportation, we've seen some cuts. We've seen cuts to electrification of our infrastructure and decarbonization. We're going to get less help right now on the federal level, but that is a reason why our state leaders, we've got to find some courage to step up. And without a doubt, having a trust fund, having an endowment where we can actually make strategic investments to better connect and to step up where it's more difficult for city and county and tribal leaders to do so. That's exactly the logic behind the Climate Commitment Act. That's exactly the logic of us dedicating more multimodal dollars. But we've got to think even bigger. And I think one way to do that is exactly that, the trust fund.
Excellent.
Nice
You all
lobbying. I
heard
like
that.
that.
You
Yeah.
like.
Hold me accountable. Yeah.
So, my next question is: we have some state workers in the room. When something like this comes to bear, like the HEAL Act, like Complete Streets, some of these people have to machinate this on the ground, and it's not always easy, or legacy kinds of processes. We talked about procurement earlier, or we talked about different ways where process doesn't allow for complete streets assessment at the right time in the process. You even mentioned like not actually executing to scope, because sometimes you can't. What are some ways, and I realize that this is potentially not at your pay grade, but what are some ways that we can mitigate the day-to-day impacts of these legislative efforts so that they can actually come to bear?
Yeah, so I'll give another local example. And great question, by the way. Can I start with a show of hands? Who here works for the state? Amazing, amazing. Thank you for your service. A lot of so in the legislature, we actually have the easy job here. Like, we get to arm wrestle over budget questions, and then we kind of hand the ball off. And ultimately, our workforce has the difficult job of making things actually happen on the ground. And I so applaud, my mom worked for the state for a quarter century. Like, the work day in, day out is how we actually make change happen. We need to work better hand in hand with our advocates to help hold us accountable, because too often there is scope creep. Too often, because our funding models and the bureaucracy hasn't fully caught up with what we now know, the realities on the ground are not built to the best practice too often. And too often we like to build big projects that are in advance of faster highways instead of the things that we know connect communities and keep people safe. And so we need help on the ground. And we need watchdogs and we need advocates who will help us to hold to account. And so, what does that mean practically? An example in Bremerton, I have neighbors that will go out with tape measures and say, "Hey, look, this was supposed to be an 8-foot wide path because at 8 foot wide, it's safer. Folks, 2 different cyclists can pass. At 5.5 feet, that just will not happen. It's not nearly as safe. Folks can't pass each other. Someone's got to go out into traffic. This is a 5, and I see that the cut marks on the concrete." Time out, engineers. We need to go back and get the 8-foot design back off the shelf. And if my buddy Travis didn't go out there with the tape measure, that would have been poured. That concrete would have been poured, and kids for the next 50 years would have suffered the consequence of that. And so the work that we do here, it matters, and it matters deeply, and the details matter deeply. And so the legislature, we've got the easy job. Sure, here's $25 million. Let's go build a great bridge. But if it's not constructed to scope and to spec, or our partners backslide because it's cheaper to cut a corner somewhere, we all of a sudden don't get the bridge that kids living in 75 years deserve to get to school, or to get to the play field, or get to the grocery store. And so these details, they matter, and they matter generationally. And so we got to do the right thing so that someone on a panel in 75 years isn't complaining about some legislator that messed this up 75 years previous.
This is a very optimistic message. And you started out by saying we're not super optimistic at the state right now. What's a parting message that you want to leave us with so that we feel the vibe?
Hey, so I don't want to sugarcoat things. So, y'all have seen the news and read the headlines. There is a number of really challenging trade-offs we're making within the budget. And I work closely on the transportation budget and our committee, and there's a number of investments we're really doing our best to maintain and to accelerate. And there's others that it feels really rough when you're picking between pausing safe routes to school projects that are so vital to keeping kids safe and connecting communities, and then realizing that's going to mean that we got to raise a gas tax even more or raise tire taxes even more. And so there's a number of tough trade-offs we're making right now. But here's the vibe. It takes a village. It takes a village. And we all intuitively know that as community leaders who are stepping up, who are giving many of us were here yesterday. We're all here on Friday, tuning in so that we can step up for our community. It takes a village, and every one of us has a role to play in that village, and we got to do it in partnership. There's a lot of folks that care deeply in the legislature and in government at all levels that want to get these right, and your help is needed to help us get that right. And so when you when you see a project not being delivered to scope, I would love to hear it so that we can flag the committee that's helping to send the checks out so that we're spending money in the wisest way possible. And I would love to stay in touch because we are much, much stronger together. And you can do that over email. I have a bunch of cards in my pocket that I'd love to share. I've got some buttons here that say Fix Our Ferries if you want to join the coalition as we fix our ferries. And then I would also just love to follow your journeys and share your successes, because ultimately we need more successes in this moment all across the state. Of this is what happens when we invest in shared streets and safe routes to school and safer, more connected communities. We need more successes to go along with some of the hiccups that are inevitable when we're trying to change and reform a bureaucracy. And so please tag me. Share a photo of a project in your neck of the woods that's going well. Rep Greg Nance on Instagram. Shoot me a photo to my email, greg.nance@leg.wa.gov. Or come down to the Capitol and show me on your phone in person, because we do need more enthusiasm around all the progress we have made. And we also need advocates that challenge us to do better, because we're slowly turning the corner, but we got to move faster. And it will take a village to do that. Luckily, we've got a heck of a village in this room right now. So thank you.
And thank you, Governor Nance. You have absolutely stepped up for us, and I thank you for that.
It is an honor. Yes, I would love to.
Oh, all right. We're open for questions.
Thank you for being here. Cecilia Black. I work at Disability Rights Washington, and I know you're an advocate for everything we work on. So I just want to say that before my next comments, because I am so angry. I'm so angry at Washington Democrats. I'm angry at Democrats at the federal level, but like both the Senate and House transportation budgets are awful. Like the House is cutting regional mobility grants in the next 6 years. And at the same time, we are like the IBR project on Columbia, that's an embarrassment. And we should be ashamed of that. And like, I feel like, I don't know how, like, I don't know how to get to like really shame our leaders into like abandoning those things that we know are so bad for the environment, that we know are not going to reduce traffic, and that we are like investing in, continuing to invest in, despite what we say and despite what we know is really important. And I know that part of that is like, as an advocate, we like multimodal active transportation spaces, we kind of take what we can get, and then we like, and that's, I think it's, I mean, I worked so hard on the Seattle transportation levy, and I did the, like, we did the same thing. Like, we made it better. It was going to be awful. We made it good enough, and then we like pass it and like walk away. And so I guess my question to you is like, how do we like really shame or like pressure like our elected leaders, our like Democrat Party, to like truly like it's going to come with some bold like risks, because I know there's a lot of money and there's a lot of at stake at like transitioning away from these projects. But it's so frustrating when you see things that are like not being invested in that we know should be. And I guess to like, and also to advocates, like what can we do to like make sure that we're not just getting as good as we can get and walking away?
Thank you. Yeah, round of applause. Thank you. Number one, I so appreciate the spirit of your question and all the work that you've done with our local transportation grant and levy. That is a big deal, and you're hitting the nail on the head. We start oftentimes with proposals that feel really just way below the bar and disappointing, and we work at it. And that's one of my lessons. You know, I joined the legislature in 2023. And so I'm still very new, learning the ropes about how does this really happen and how do we build this out? The power of amendment is very, very powerful. And so right now is a great time for you to complain directly to me and say, look, it's completely unacceptable that we're basically robbing this account to pay for more highways around the state is what it amounts to. That is so deeply disappointing on so many levels. Please send me an email requesting an amendment to the transportation budget. I have until 10 a.m. on Sunday to submit that as an amendment to our budget right now. And you have my promise, I will be submitting that as an amendment. We need to do better for many of our neighbors. This is a classic example that the first thing on the chopping block is, oh, it's a little inconvenient and it's a relatively high number compared to how many people we're serving. And too often that is used as an excuse to leave some of our neighbors in need in the dust. Deeply unacceptable. And we have to change how we do budgeting. That would be an amendment that I would love to sponsor. That will be in Chairman Jake Fai's and Senator Marco Lias's inbox on Sunday morning. And at the very least, let's make some legislators vote down this amendment. And if they're going to tell us no, okay, fine. But I want to make sure that is in their inbox, that's amended to the legislation. And then we also got to show up, because if we don't show up, folks don't even realize. I mean, I've tried to read every word of this budget. It's hundreds of pages long. It got released on last Monday. By Sunday at 10 a.m., our amendments are due. And so we count on people paying attention to help us. We have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And the job is, it can feel like a lot. And so I appreciate you flagging that. And I want to make sure you have my contact to send me that amendment language so we can get it done. Thank you. Yeah.
Question. Again, thank you for being here and talking with us. How do you recommend, like, we should advocate specifically for our project, the sidewalk data mapping project, to get our budget continued into the next biennium, and then the additional, well, not additional, but the 5 million that we were promised from the last biennium to carry over? How would you, recommend we best advocate and then hold accountable?
Yeah, remind me, do you have a line item in the current proposal, or do you know?
There's a section on it currently, not am I? Okay, yes.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
We are. So we are in the Senate budget
Yeah.
for the continuation of the unspent 2023-25 proviso and the 5 million that we were expecting for the 25-27. In the House budget, it's only the continuation of the unspent funds. So we
Gotcha.
have a $5 million gap
Okay.
in the House budget.
Okay, so that is a good starting place to be, and that's why I asked the question. So, for those of us that are less budget nerds, we have a bicameral legislature. We start off with two different proposals, the House and the Senate. In some cases, both proposals suck. And it's like, what are we doing? In other cases, it's like, hey, like one chamber at least kind of got this right. And in that case, there's a different playbook. So in this case, instead of, hey, please fix this total mess, it's, hey, please accept the Senate version. Here's the benefits of accepting the Senate version. Here's the real cost of accepting the House version. And I will say, our chair on the House side is he was under different marching orders than the Senate side because we're using different formulas for how we get there. And so he cares a lot about getting the right data. We've talked extensively about how do we support multimodal? How do we have safer streets and more connected communities? He cares about that. And so this is a place where if we just give him a gentle nudge of, look, the Senate nailed this, the House, we kind of whiffed on it, let's get it right. This is a place where he then can look like a good guy in the negotiation of, sure, I can accept your proposal. And so I'm planning to give him a call tomorrow to talk about ferries. And this is one where I can just say, hey, like the Senate actually got that one pretty good. And then we're about to do an arm wrestling competition over like a 3-week process to figure out how to actually square the budget. As a reminder, the budgets have to be identical for the governor then to sign and then go deploy. And so it's really nice if one of the chambers actually gets it just right. You don't need a bunch of amendments then. You just need to accept that version of the Senate. So you're actually in a better position than you realize. And when I speak to the chair, when I bug him on a Saturday morning, that's one of the things I'll slide in here.
Do you need us to send you an email or call out the
If you could flag the subsection, one of the kind of open secrets in all this, our staff, our team really runs the show. And so I'll talk to the chair, just that's good protocol. And, we're buddies, but our staff is actually the ones writing out the multi-hundred page. And I'll make sure that that's flagged that, hey, the Senate actually got this right. And our House version, this is only fractional, it'll set us back. And a little bit of language from you about here's the actual practical cost of, hey, it might feel like we're saving $1 million or $2 or $3, but actually this is years of progress that we will lose. That helps us speak much more practically to the actual impact to our communities. And part of the beauty about data is that as soon as we have more of the right data, we can then make better decisions across all 49 legislative districts. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Hey.
Thank you for coming. I am surprised you're here. I'm very grateful because I know you probably haven't slept in about 17 days. I'm Adair Hawkins. I'm the mayor of Carnation. And being on the transportation committee, I really like what you're saying about multimodal and connectivity. My question to you is this. We have the most dangerous roundabout in King County, or lack there. We have the most dangerous intersection in King County, but it's on a state highway and a county road. We've tried for years to get the $2.9 million to fix it. As a city, it's right outside our jurisdiction, and we even have a private family willing to give up all the land for free. My question to you is this. How do I best communicate the needs when our King County representative says, no, it's the state, and the state says, no, it's King County. And my only job is to listen to people in our community and stop the car accidents and the death. Can you walk me through this?
Yeah. Number one, thank you so much for being here. And I was bummed to miss your keynote earlier. So, hey, I'll dig up the video. I'd love to see it. But thank you for what you do and being a huge advocate. Our cities is where so much magic and action happens, and we need great advocates and champions there. During COVID, I stayed with my buddy Nick, who lives on, I think it's called Tolt Hill, right above Carnation. Fantastic, your neighbor Nick. So I've run through a number of kind of sketchy intersections where there's steep hills, quick turns. And I know what you mean when you say that, hey, this is dangerous. And it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if y'all are on an I-2 designation, which is basically some of our most dangerous state routes. But it sounds like you're right off the state route, which that's one of the misses in the way that we do our budgeting. And I'll give you an example of how I try to work through this. So there are a number of projects that we actually say, hey, this needs a $30 million roundabout on. But our friends at WashDOT haven't actually always tried the low cost enhancements, LCE. One of those in my neck of the woods is folks head to the ferry terminal. If you're running late, you actually hit the gas and let's go as fast as I can. I got to get 2 more miles to the ferry terminal. There's a bend in the road after a little hill, and there can be stop traffic after a stoplight. And then there have been 5 major accidents there with injuries and unfortunately 1 fatality there back in 2016. That is now on an I-2 list where it is going to be remedied by the state because of fears over more safety issues. You might already have a designation. You do? Okay. And so part of this is sort of where you are in the pecking order. Now, here's my what I've shared with our WashDOT leadership and what we're trying to get amended into the budget is that for every one of those projects, we actually want to begin with what are the least expensive and fastest ways for us to make them safer today. Because we've got to acknowledge the reality. Our transportation budget is billions of dollars in the hole. We cannot fund everything that we need to fund. And that is a reality. However, that doesn't mean that's not an excuse for inaction. There are a lot of things we can do. For instance, on Bainbridge Island, where a community I represent, where I live, we can actually put up signs saying, stop traffic ahead. There's a little red light insignia, slow down. Here, instead of it being 55, we're going to change the speed limit to maybe 40 or 35 to slow people down, and then put up rumble strips 150 yards before that probable slowdown where those accidents have happened. And instead of being $30 million, that's about $65,000 to $95,000. And so we stretch dollars farther, and then all of a sudden, that's one of the highest on the I-2 list. It shouldn't be. I'm actually suggesting, look, we can do a quicker remedy to actually solve the safety issue because in Carnation, you have a more fundamental problem where I don't think a new sign is going to fix some of the bends and the hairpin bends and the big steep slopes. You actually need a larger roundabout refurb, and we need to prioritize dollars there. And so are you in the 5th legislative district or?
We were gerrymandered into the 12th. So Mike Steele has put our only $2.9 million ask into the budget.
Okay.
So hopefully you'll find the time to approve the 2.9 and not $30 million. I love what you're saying about low cost enhancements. So we're doing right now the rumble strips. And then as far as county goes, and I'm sorry, I don't want to take the stage, do you have advice on how to better communicate? Because I feel like on a local level, people really are great listeners, but there's no action. Advice?
So your timing is actually very good in one respect. Some of us may have heard the news. There's going to be a new CEO of Sound Transit, which means we're going to have a new King County council chair sooner than later, right? And so when folks are running for office is a great time to get some promises and to bank those assurances. And from my knowledge of the field, a few of the folks running for the office are actually from more urban areas of King County. They would, if I'm their political advisor, it's like, hey, let's show that we're a full King County kind of, chair kind of candidate. Let's actually go out and talk about safety issues and community issues beyond just kind of core downtown population centers. Carnation happens to check that box pretty nicely. And so that would be an idea. Is like, look, this is a treacherous area, maybe the most dangerous intersection in all of King County. We haven't made the budget previously. We've only got $2.9 million in the state budget. That's not going to build out fully what we need. We're going to need a better county partnership. And so part of this is your timing is good. I think you could get one of our, the candidates to get interested, and all of a sudden, if one of them is sort of stealing a march on the others, maybe the others then start paying attention, and then we get a promise that we can't just think about our core cities. We've got to think about everybody in King County and folks across the state, and this is clearly a treacherous area that needs to get fixed. So that'd be my best advice. Yeah. Godspeed, Mayor.
About the trust fund idea. I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, so it's a great idea. You know, so frequently as legislators, we get way too much credit. So like, this is actually not my idea by the slightest turn of the measure. Okay, and I actually don't even know the full history, but here's what and in fact, could I phone a friend? Do you know more of the history? Because y'all probably just heard a keynote. You probably all know more about this than I do. I don't want to pretend like I'm some expert. So, yeah. On the Transportation Trust Fund?
One. Yeah.
Yes, please. Let's have a real expert rather than your legislator here. So.
I just know one. So we just heard a presentation from Kirk Hovenkotter, who is the executive director of Transportation Choices Coalition, and this idea is something that he has been championing, which is and it's very aligned with what you were saying in terms of having consistent generational investments and generational expectations for safety and pedestrian networks and connectivities for our communities. And what this proposal is it identifies WashDOT controlled Main Street highways throughout the state. And these are places where 47% of traffic fatalities in the state happen, and are really critical areas where growth is slated to happen. Where a lot of cities and a lot of jurisdictions are saying, well, because we know not increasing density is tough for a lot of jurisdictions, so they put it in sort of the least desirable areas, and those happen to be also the areas that are least equipped to accept that growth in terms of safety, in terms of connectivity. So again, and sorry to put throw Chair Fye under the bus, the Senate bill has $460 million over 6 years to create what we're calling a Main Street Highways mega project. The idea of sort of taking the same playbook from the interstate highway project and say, hey, we're going to commit millions of dollars in a generation to make real change on the ground. And the House budget doesn't have it. So what do we do?
Thank you for the extra perspective there, and thank you for the great question that I'm unequipped to answer. Yeah.
Like these kids, they don't have a safe neighborhood, not enough swimming pools, soccer fields. Like if there's a quick way that I'm gonna do it, I just make it happen. Because these kids, like poor kids, they really want to do something. And then outside Washington State, when they go to somewhere, we will be like, well, you have this. How come we don't have? Like Bellevue, Shoreline, they feel of like being able to put something there for them to do sports. And there is no time for me to write the letters. It's too slow for me. I just want to know how to make it work. I'll make it work. So just let us know. And then we could work on something, just make it so clear. And we don't want to wait because these kids they are growing up. And we don't want them to send outside Washington State. They don't have to. They have everything over here. Why do we have to send them somewhere else? We want them to just be here. You would be amazed that these parents, they come over here, they were thinking we will have the best, right? And then once their kids grow older, they were like, if they compete something, they come back, we were like, we decided that we're gonna move outside Washington State. And that's how pathetic it is. But we are growing. We are growing rapidly. And you know the magic. You have to teach us. Just being able to have the kids speak like this. They told me I have to hire a coach. It's 1 hour for many, many $100s. I was amazed. You have to be out there. Out here for us. Go to as many meetings as possible. Take your time to really meet everyone. The population is changing rapidly. We have like this guy, that guy. They're from all over the world. The best brand that you can have in this state. And our kids are growing up over here. We cannot wait. And I'm so sorry that I really have to leave to, pick them up, drive them to the sports that this nation appreciate. But we cannot wait.
Thank you. Yeah, and we cannot wait. And so I think on one level, we need to make the right, bold, long-term investments. We also need to move fast. And the state is actually not great at moving fast. Thank you for your question. And as you head out, local Are you great? Wonderful. Hey, Marshall Island's great. Y'all were my big rival in high school debate years ago. So I've spent some time on Mercer Island. We need to work at all levels, and we need to better collaborate together. And so we need more ball fields in Kitsap as well. And we have a local Rotary who is really stepping up to try to build more of these ball fields for us. Every kid deserves a safe place to play. The place where I think the state can be most helpful is around safe routes to school. That's an example of a bucket we really should just be putting every dollar we can into, because that ultimately means healthier communities where people feel safer getting around, kids can stay outside, don't have to be glued to a phone. A lot of good things happen when we keep our kids safe. It creates way stronger communities for all of us. And then a lot of what this nice mom who's heading out to get her kids riffed on, we also need to move faster. And so there are some things where a local group of neighbors can actually just be much more agile. And so if city council is unable or unwilling to move on something, we in Washington have, we can do LIDs, local improvement districts, from very small scale, a sidewalk or a driveway that we, on a private road, to very large. And so, for instance, the most meaningful legislation I'm sponsoring this year is the Mosquito Fleet Act to create more passenger-only ferry service around Puget Sound. And it's, the goal is to get more people out of their cars and moving around Puget Sound. And really, this started as something of a local improvement district that expanded to be Kitsap County-wide in the year 2016. And we got this funded, and now there's 9 different boats that carry people across the water to get to work, to school, to the doctor. That's what we needed in our neck of the woods. The needs across the state are very different. Of course, like in your neck of the woods, you may not need a passenger-only ferry. You might want more ball fields. And thinking about what we as neighbors can do. And right now, the state is being very, we're slow-footed, and we have unlike Congress, to bridge our budget gap, we can't just print money. And so we either are going to raise taxes and fees on folks, and likely there's going to be some of that. And then we've also got to find ways to reduce investments that haven't panned out the way that we thought they would. And that's a difficult dance because we don't have a printing press to just make more Ben Franklins over here. So that is a challenge. So change is going to happen locally in this next cycle. And that's why I'm glad y'all are here, because this is a group of folks that want to make a difference in our neck of the woods and across the state too.
Awesome. Thank you. I want everybody to thank Greg Nance again for joining us today. This was fantastic and galvanizing change.